process back in New Jersey. And so we're just trying to, again, like I said, have conversations with coaches like yourselves about programs like West Texas so that, perhaps this might reach another kid back in New Jersey where we're from or from somewhere out, someplace else, because there's a great big world out there. And if you're a dedicated student athlete and maybe you didn't hit your peak or your prime in high school, there's a place for you to develop and really shine. And so we're just trying to highlight coaches like yourselves and programs like yours that are doing great things across the board, whether it's Division One, Division Two, Division Three, junior college, NAIA. So here we are.
All right, awesome.
Cool. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are back. We're here, you're there, but we do appreciate you joining us tonight. And we do appreciate our guest, Coach Jerry Baltes, for joining us from Grand Valley last night. Tonight, we're back on the cross-country course. We're back on the indoor oval, and we're getting ready for outdoor track with Coach Zach Daniel from West Texas A&M. But as you know, before we get started, make sure you like and subscribe. If you're watching on YouTube, hit that button. Follow us on Instagram and all your podcast platforms. Drop a comment, let us know your thoughts, and join the conversation. You always know we love to hear your feedback. And if you're getting any value out of anything we're doing over there, please feel free to support the show. Buy us a coffee. Every sip, every bean fuels the next episode. And remember, this is a grassroots movement over here at Airey Bros Radio. We are about spotlighting the programs and coaches we wish we knew about during our own recruiting process. Runners, wrestlers, student athletes alike, this one is for you. And if you need training, whether it's an ultramarathon, marathon, maybe it's a couch to 5K, we've got you covered. Check out Black Sheep Endurance for elite running and nutrition coaching. And a big shout out to our sponsor, Fueled by Champions, built for the grind, CS Instant Coffee, the athlete-owned and operated coffee brand, keeping us dialed in on the trails and in the gym and behind the mic. No waste, no wait, just elite all-natural energy in every sip. Grab yours today. Go to cscoffee.com. All right, y'all. Tonight we're sitting down with one of the top young coaches in the NCAA Division II world of distance running, cross-country, indoor and outdoor track, Coach Zach Daniel from West Texas A&M. As I mentioned, he is the head cross-country coach. He's the assistant track coach overseeing the distance runners. He has led the Buffs to their 11th straight men's Lone Star Conference, actually 12th in 2024. He coached both the men's and women's teams to record finishes at this year's NCAA Cross Country Nationals, third for the men and second for the women. He is a three-time Lone Star Conference Coach of the Year, and he's also a former West Texas A&M University standout athlete, where he was an NCAA qualifier in cross country, conference champion in track and field, and a two-time academic All-American. Coach Zach Daniel, is an honor and a pleasure to chat with you this evening. We do greatly appreciate your time. Welcome to the show.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. Glad to be here.
Yes, it's an honor to chat with you, pick your brain about all things West Texas A&M. I've been trying to convince Jimmy that Texas is the place to be for quite a while, and I think we might have got him with West Texas A&M in Canyon, Texas. So we're going to work on that a little bit while we're picking your brain about cross country and track and field.
Okay, sounds awesome.
Coach, before we get too far into it, anything you would like to plug or promote? Maybe if the university has camps coming up for the summer for high school athletes, anywhere you would like us to send recruits, any social media outlets, anything like that, the floor is yours.
Yeah, we have a cross country camp starting July 17th. It's a 4-day camp. It's great. Just gives you kind of a college experience. You get to come in, stay in the dorms, eat in the caf, really learn what it's like to live and train at West Texas A&M. We've had quite a few recruits from that camp, people that we've signed. So that's been great for us. And West Texas is a hidden gem. So it's nice for people to come from all over the state and all over the country and find us through that avenue. On social media, yeah, Instagram, just WT Track and Field. That's probably our most socialized thing at the university. We also have a Twitter, same handle, just WT Track and Field. And then a Facebook page, WT Athletics, does a great job of also promoting us. So yeah, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, we're on all those socials.
Awesome. Thank you very much. We'll put all that stuff in the show notes for you as well. One of the ways we like to kick things off, Coach, is we like to have some through lines for our guests, but also to make the world smaller for our listeners as well. So this one's for Jimmy. Jimmy is a big fan of professional wrestling, and there are quite a few alumni from West Texas A&M that have had success in the ranks of professional wrestling. So I was just curious, is that something that is known by the student population? Is that something that is celebrated by the university?
No, not at all. I actually only found this out, and I myself was a student at West Texas. We have something called the Hall of Champions, where every year they recognize notable alumni, and one of these individuals was brought up, I believe, at the ceremony last year. So that's the only way I had heard of it. So I'm sure the majority of the student athletes or the student body at WT has no idea that such people have come to school there.
Okay, sorry to let you down, Jim.
I knew. That's why I didn't bring it up.
Well, awesome. One more we got for you, Coach. We'd love to hear the story about this too, but you guys were in the, I believe it's the South Central qualifier for cross country. Is it the South Central region?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and that was at Washington Park in Denver, Colorado, and it looked like it was quite a crazy event for a regional meet. But Jimmy and I lived in Denver, Colorado for Jimmy was a little bit longer than me, but about 4.5, 5 years. We were about a half a mile from Wash Park, and so we have traversed many miles in loops around Washington Park, and even took in a turkey trot in a snowstorm or the aftermath of a snowstorm. So we definitely sympathize and empathize with what the athletes were going through when they ran at regionals. And I was doing a little research, looking some things up. It seems like it took you guys a little bit longer to get to the meet than had it originally anticipated. And that might have had an impact on some people's performances.
Yeah, so anytime we go to Denver, we're expecting some sort of weather. I mean, I've been there 2 times now since I've been coaching at West Texas, and both times there's been a considerable amount of snow on the ground. Um, so yeah, we were planning to leave, on Thursday, races on Saturday. My office is right next to the offensive coordinator for football, who's from Colorado. I said, "Hey man, I'm looking at this road, and it's saying this pass is going to be closed." So he's like, "Oh yeah, you should go this route." He mapped it all out for me, and I followed his advice. Well, yeah, the pass was closed, but the road that I went on ended up getting shut down. So we were stranded in a gas station for about 8 hours, um, just sitting there playing cards, nothing to eat. Kids just eating beef jerky and, just buying snacks that we could. Finally got the word that the road was open. So it took us about 2 hours to travel what was 45 miles into Denver. Made it, went to the park, obviously couldn't do any pre-meets, had to find a Planet Fitness, paid, $200 or something so all my athletes could get on some treadmills and move around a little bit. So yeah, our travel, what's pretty easy from Amarillo to Denver. I mean, it's about 6.5 hours, ended up taking us 14. So that was quite the experience. So I was happy that we just got there, we qualified, we put it behind us. We didn't have the best day. So it was just nice to make the national meet after such a hectic travel like that.
And so was it, I guess it probably wasn't a surprise that you superseded your results from regionals at nationals then.
Yeah, I kept telling the group like, hey, if we can have a travel like that and we can have everything go against us and we're in the best region in the country, and the men autoed and the women getting that large bid, uh, I knew that we were going to be able to do great things at the national meet. I will say the women surprised me. I didn't think that we would be able to make the leap and get that close to Adams State, especially with our top girl actually dropped out at the national meet with about 700, 600 meters left, and ended up passing out and having to go to the hospital. So all those things considered, yeah, I was very shocked by our women. I knew we were good, but they really shined on that day.
Coach, with the travel like that, going to the region meet, what's the mindset? What do you say to the kids going on the line, knowing that they had a 16-hour drive? You were at the Planet Fitness to get them to shake their legs out on the way. What's the mindset? How do you kind of get them to forget what just happened and go perform their best?
Yeah, well, we talk a lot about just being able to turn the page on things. Like I tell them, hey, you had a good workout. You got to turn the page on it. We got to move forward. You had a bad workout. You had a bad race. You got to turn the page. We got to move forward. So, we face a lot of adverse weather out here in West Texas. Um, so to them, I just tried to frame it like, hey, this is just another day. Like we deal with this all the time. We're one of the most resilient teams in the country because the Texas Panhandle, it has its perks, but it can be a hard place to train. Um, so I think just bringing that mindset to them every day, literally for every practice and every race, just framing it like another day, like, hey, this is just another obstacle that we have to get around, and it's not that big of a deal. And I think the majority of the team definitely saw it that way, and we performed okay given all the circumstances, which was nice to see.
So, Rich, I'm going off our set list here, but Coach just mentioned that the weather isn't always the best in the Panhandle, and it's something you have to deal with. So, how do you broach that when you have recruits coming? Like, hey, this is awesome location, we got a great team, but you're gonna have to deal with windstorms, and you're gonna have sand in your eyes when you're running. Like, how do you talk about that when you're trying to get recruits?
Yeah, I really think anywhere in the US is a trade-off, right? There's no perfect place. I talk to a lot of international athletes, and um, most of them, when they think of the US, they think of California, right? Sunny all the time, perfect weather. And that's just, unfortunately, that's a very, very small section of the country, and everywhere either the winter's cold or the summer's hot or there's wind or it rains all the time. So to me, it's not that. I think the pros far outweigh the cons here. Like, we're at a mild amount of altitude, about 3,600 feet, 1,100 meters. To me, that's a huge win. We can still get this aerobic stimulus, but we're not, at Adams State or Colorado School of Mines where we have to really adjust our training because we're at altitude, you just can't touch certain paces. Dirt roads are obviously a huge sell for us, right? Not just with the wind, right? That's kind of a way to negate it. Like, hey, it's windy here, but I can put the wind to your back for 30 miles and you don't have to turn one time. So there's clever ways that we can get around it. I've had some really good recruits on in the middle of these dust storms, and I'm always nervous that it's going to scare them away. And the majority of them still end up committing because I think we have a great setup here at West Texas A&M, and although the weather is not always in our favor, like I said, I think the pros just far outweigh the cons with training environment for us.
Well, Coach Jimmy and I both lived in Southern California. We can vouch that the weather's not always perfect there. No one ever talks about the marine layer when you're on the East Coast and all you're doing is dreaming about chips and getting out to the West Coast, and then you wake up and it's cloudy and overcast most of May and June.
Right, exactly, exactly.
Coach, I'm curious, looking at the roster, I would have to imagine that for some of your athletes, seeing snow was a first when they went up to Denver this year for regionals, yeah?
It actually was. So my two new girls from Ghana, Abigail, Naomi, my Kenyan male, Dennis. Yeah, they'd never seen snow. So when we got, we weren't that far into Colorado. We were probably in the northern part of New Mexico when we started to see snow on the ground, and yeah, they were freaking out. They just couldn't believe it. Right? It's something they've only seen in pictures. Um, so racing in that environment for them as well, just being that cold for the first time. Your feet are wet. They did a great job of plowing the course. MSU Denver, they did a phenomenal job except for the starting line, which is about, 600 meters in length there at Washington Park. So you're coming around every loop. You go through that thing 4 times if you're on a 10K. Your feet are just soaked. So feeling that type of cold, yeah, for those new people, that was something that they'd never dealt with.
Yeah. And we just want to give a quick shout out to MSU because that's where this podcast really kicked off when Jimmy was a student at CU Denver. We used the radio station at MSU, and that's where we started this back in the spring of 2019. So shout out to all our friends at MSU.
Cool.
But it was also the weather wasn't ideal at nationals either, was it?
Yeah, it wasn't. And that's the thing. Like, again, when people think of California, I think they're thinking palm trees and sun. And we got there pretty early. We got there on Tuesday. It was already raining, and we didn't see the sun the entire time. So we were supposed to go see the course Friday. They sent out an email saying, "Hey, I don't know if this thing's going to be open tomorrow. It's raining way more than we anticipated. If you want to preview the course, you need to come up Thursday." So that's exactly what we did. Um, and then Fridays when they receive the most rain. So we get out to the course Saturday morning, and again they did a phenomenal job. They're pushing water. They have leaf blowers. They have brooms. Like they're doing everything they can. At the end of the day, it's cross country, right? So the course was pretty squishy. It was pretty soft in a lot of spots, but again, like I think after what our kids went through in Denver, to them that was nothing. And I think it was almost an advantage for us. Like that probably freaked out a lot of teams dealing with those elements, but it was such a lesser degree of what we dealt with, at the regional meets that to our kids it was nothing.
Yeah, everyone runs under the same conditions. It's the ones that rise to the occasion during in the face of adversity that usually surprise themselves sometimes, but definitely surprise a lot of other people that are maybe don't have them at that point on paper, going into it.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Coach, one thing we like to do here is we like to see how our guests got their start in the sport and how they kind of
Mhm.
transition that to being a coach. So, how'd you start off running?
Yeah, I mean, so I grew up in a pretty small town, a little over 3,000 people out here in West Texas. And everybody, I mean, you played everything growing up, right? So when I was younger, basketball, baseball, football, um, and I didn't even know what cross country really was, to be honest. My brother is kind of the one that drug me into it. So I have an identical twin brother. He decided that, hey, I want to go out for cross country. He did. He ended up being pretty good at it. So I ended up giving it a shot. I was in the 8th grade, got second in my district off of hardly anything, and really just, I mean, kind of fell in love with the sport. Like I did it because my brother and my friends were doing it, and I noticed that I had somewhat of a talent for such a small school, and really by the time I was a sophomore in high school, I ditched all the other sports and I just went all in running. And yeah, I ended up being able to get recruited to a few places. I ended up going to South Plains College, who, one of the best JUCOs in the nation. It's about 90 minutes down the road here from Canyon. And yeah, things just didn't work out for me there. I really struggled. I was running 20 miles a week. I was asked to run 70 miles a week the first week I stepped on campus, ended up injured, frustrated. So I had some great friends here that were running at West Texas A&M, and the coach here at the time had also recruited me. And so I decided to transfer. And yeah, I ended up having some success here. I won two individual conference titles. I got to run in some national meets as a team in cross country, and ran out of eligibility in 2017. And by that time, I was fully convinced that I was going to be a physical therapist. Like and I had shadowed a lot of places. I wanted to get into the clinics, and I don't know. It just kind of changed for me. When I was in graduate school, I really started doing a lot of research with like running economy and strength training, and I just had a lot of curiosity about the sport. So decided to hang around and ended up just being kind of a student volunteer while I was finishing off my master's, and then got really, really lucky. My former coach, Darren Flowers, had taken a job at UTRGV down here in the Rio Grande Valley of Texas, and I took a leap of faith, went there, volunteered for 6 months, and ended up getting hired full time. And yeah, I just kind of found myself in the middle of the sports at the Division I level. It was a huge wake up call. But when I had the chance to come back here to West Texas, I mean, it was a no brainer. It's a place that, I feel could really grow. There'd been some success, especially on the men's side from a distance standpoint. And I just saw this place where there was such a, track and field was kind of a powerhouse, sprints, jumps, throws. The women had won a few national titles. And, I really thought we had the resources here to be able to do good things on the distance side of things. And we're just now starting to kind of bring that to life here. But yeah, if I got into the sport just because my brother talked me into it, I guess is a short story there.
I know all about that, coach. My brother really did talk me into it. I didn't have a choice. I kind of got pushed into it, but I know all about your brother getting you into sports. You had brought up that you got your master's in physical therapy and you were all into the mechanics of running
Mhm.
and running economy. How do you use that in your role now with the athletes?
Yeah, so I spent really almost my 2 full years, especially my last year at West Texas A&M, um, writing my thesis on running economy and specifically the weight room, like how it can impact an endurance athlete. So that's probably the biggest things that, I feel like now it's pretty common for endurance athletes to lift, but we do like just a lot of neuromuscular work in our program. We're not necessarily a really, really high volume program. I mean, we still run a lot, don't get me wrong, but I don't have guys running 100, 120 miles a week, anything like that. We do like Monday, Thursday, we do these really big sort of sprint mechanic drill sessions. We also sprint uphill every week, and then we're in the weight room 2 times every week. So really kind of that biomechanical, neuromuscular side of things that I really dug into the literature when I was in graduate school has influenced my coaching a lot, right? And just how fatigue and the central nervous system, and you typically think to those things only in sprinting. But to me, it's a huge element of our program, and that's probably how we differ a little bit, maybe from some of these other programs in the nation.
Coach, you're speaking our language over here. As I mentioned, Jimmy and I were both wrestlers, and that kind of, I guess, was what led us to strength and conditioning. But I saw the benefit of it as a track coach and realized that if I could get high school kids stronger, that they were going to be faster and they didn't necessarily need to run as much volume as maybe some of the other programs. And uh, I really appreciate you saying all that stuff. Curious, when you're in the gym 2 days a week, can you give us some of that secret sauce? What are you all doing in the weight room? Anything specifically? Are you doing your core lifts like squat, deadlift, things like that, or you're doing more unilateral type stuff?
Yeah, it's mostly bilateral and big muscle groups. So we kind of split it. Tuesdays really are, I would, a heavier day. It's not that heavy, right? So, some of my middle distance athletes will put a barbell on their back and they'll back squats. But a lot of it's like kettlebell stuff, whether it's lunges, split squats, just trying to recruit the big muscles in your lower legs that you really don't get the chance to when you're running, 90 minutes at a slow pace or whatever it is. Um, so that's kind of our Tuesday lifts. Uh, and then Friday's more power developments. We're typically just moving some med balls around, trying to move a little quicker, some low amplitude plyometrics. Um, but the thing that makes these lifts a little bit more difficult is we typically do them right after a session. So, Tuesday is the day that we're typically on the track doing something pretty specific, and then we'll go straight into the weight room and do these. So we're kind of my probably the best analogy I could use for it. It's like trying to kick at the end of a race, right? You're trying to learn to recruit these really high motor units, right, that require a good amount of threshold. So we're trying to teach your body to do that, right, to recruit these motor units when you're under a lot of stress, when you're already fatigued. So that's kind of my thinking there. So the volume of the lifts isn't it's not very much, but it's relatively heavy, especially on that Tuesday.
You mentioned threshold there, so I got to ask, with your exercise science background and being the hot topic lately, the last maybe 3 or 4 years, are the buffs, are they dabbling in double threshold at all?
We are not. We are not. And I have this discussion all the time with a few guys on my team and some
Are they
previous
begging
graduate
for it?
assistants. They're not begging for it, but they want to know as to why we're not doing it because it is very trendy and there's some great programs in the nation that are doing it. And and my rationale is I think they 100% work. Like there's no doubt in my mind. But I think you have to have the right temperament as an athlete. Because like when I prescribe threshold right now, it's kind of this comfortable hard pace, and a lot of our student athletes will run a little quicker than that actual threshold, which is okay if we monitor it and we do it correctly. So there's that aspect of it. I just think you have to have a level of maturity and patience that a lot of college kids just don't have. And then the in between the sessions, right? Like recovering, fueling. Um, I think it's just really hard to do when you're asked to sit in class all day. So to me, it just doesn't fit with the kind of student athlete we have here. Being in the collegiate setting, having to go to class. Um, and then a lot of our student athletes, we recruit pretty heavily internationally. They didn't always grow up running by the watch like we do here in the US. They're very unfamiliar with splits and pace per mile or pace per kilometer. So those things are quite the learning curve for them. So all that clumped together, I just think double threshold is not the right fit for us here. But I think there's so many successful programs doing it. I think if you could fit it in, it definitely works.
Coach, when you started talking about strength training, you saw Rich and I's eyes perk up because, like Rich said, that is something that we believe in and has helped us as athletes, and I know it's helped Rich as a runner. Have you had athletes come in that didn't really have any kind of strength training in high school, and you just seen them become a new person and a new runner?
Yeah, definitely. And I feel that's mostly the case. Whether it's the European athletes we recruit or, they're from Africa or even from Texas, I feel like that's something that's pretty neglected across the board because most people think, oh, if you lift, you get heavy or you get big, and distance athletes don't need to be big. And I think that's like 40 years ago, right? So when it comes to exercise physiology. So yeah, I've seen it transform athletes, and not only directly from that, but just the benefit you get from being able to stay healthy and handle more volume as a result of getting stronger. So the benefits aren't always right away because there's definitely an adaptation curve, right? You get in there, you're incredibly sore, and maybe we have to back off volume for a few days, and that could take a while for some athletes to get used to. But I think once we consistently get in there and you get used to that stimulus, and like I said, as a byproduct of that, you're able to run more and move more efficiently, then that's what leads to the consistency in training that's ultimately going to make you faster, over weeks, months, years. So yeah, I've seen it completely transform athletes.
Coach, and you said that you got your coaching start. Your coach at West Texas A&M went to Division I school, and you were able to
Mhm.
help him out there. Then you saw the cross country role open up at West Texas A&M, and you've been there for 2 years now, correct? As the head
I've
coach?
been here for a little over three.
Okay.
Yeah. So I got hired, let me think here, December of 2021.
All right. And how has your role changed in the way you do it as you're becoming more mature as a coach, as the team is growing and finding success? How have, Rich and I, when we started coaching, we always just thought it was the X's and O's. And then more and more we talk to
Mhm.
college coaches and people who are trying to create culture and programs. There's a lot more that goes into it. How has your role changed over those 3 years?
Yeah, I mean, I got into coaching because I fell in love with exercise physiology, right? And I was always so curious about chasing this idea of a perfect training plan. And the longer I'm in coaching, I noticed that that doesn't exist, right? And when I came to West Texas, I think I really undervalued. I was an assistant coach at Rio Grande Valley, and I would help manage sessions, but I really wasn't writing too much. And I was the director of ops as well. So I was handling all the travel, all the recruiting stuff. So when I got here, I was pretty comfortable with being able to write a program because I had read so much, I'd wrote so much just in myself, just practicing. But I think I really undervalued the importance of a relationship between an athlete and them getting you to, building that trust and getting them to really buy into what you're doing. Um, so probably my first 5 or 6 months when I was here, I just got thrown into the middle of indoor and we're racing and these athletes are expecting results. I really zoned in on having just individual meetings, a lot of team meetings, really getting to learn, how a person ticks, what's important to you, what do you want out of this experience, and just day-to-day conversations. Like I think that just goes so far in coaching, and that's something that I really undervalued. I just thought you could write the perfect training plan, put it out there, the athletes run fast, right, and they buy in, and that's just not the case. So really, the interactions I have with kids are a lot more intentional now. There's a lot more structure, if we have a team meeting as to the things that I say and getting my points across, because I do think it's important, right? And I think culture has become sort of this buzzword, and sometimes it loses a little bit of its meaning. But making sure people get along and that they're buying into what you're doing, and all these little things matter a lot when you're trying to create, a national powerhouse, not just for 1 or 2 years, but if you want to be consistent over the long term. Like these student athletes have to be the one that drive this culture. It can't always be the coach, every year restarting. Like the kids have to hold up this level of expectation. And I think that's what we're slowly starting to do here at West Texas, right? Is people know what it's like now to be a part of this program and what's expected of them. And they're gonna hold these student athletes that are coming in that are new accountable.
Coach, talking about the team and some of the athletes, the international athletes, I'm curious, what does recruiting look like for you, and how much of a benefit is it to you, one, having grown up in the area, but then also being an alumni and being an athlete of the program that you're now coaching?
Yeah, well, to me, like when I got here, I obviously love West Texas, so to me, it's an easy product to sell. You know, um, not just the program itself, but the university itself. So, getting on the phone with a kid in France or a kid in Ghana or wherever it might be, and telling them about this amazing place in Little Canyon, Texas, where you have all this training ground and you have a university that supports you and you have degrees that are highly accredited. To me, that's a pretty easy part of the job because I'm very passionate about it and I really do love this place. But I think that, being genuine in that and really believing in what I'm selling resonates with a lot of these recruits. And I think it's been a huge part of the reason that we're able to land some of these people that I never would have imagined would end up here at West Texas A&M.
And from an international perspective, I'm always fascinated by how that works. I mean, I'm sure once you get the train rolling, you get some recruits, you get some people in having some success, word gets back out. I'm sure some athletes are reaching out to you and they're finding West Texas. But how does that how does that initiate? And is there connections or former athletes or other people that you know that have made connections overseas?
Yeah, so I mean, being an alum of this program, I was fortunate to, there were a lot of internationals at West Texas even when I was running, and I've been lucky to keep up with those guys. They're good friends of mine now, and that's where a lot of these connections have formed. Um, and then just yeah, word to mouth. You get one guy, you get him to develop. He starts running really well for you. All of a sudden, he's got a friend, right, that's interested. And that's especially been the case on the women's side. Like if you look at our roster, you may think that I only recruit females from France, but it just so happened to end up that way. And the transfer portal's also been big for us too. Um, but yeah, I mean, finding that connection always helps get people here to West Texas. And it's really been more so that than anything. Just, hey, come here, you develop, you love your experience, we treat you right, we have a good relationship. And then that just blossoms and grows and keeps going out. So yeah, that friend to friend connection, whether it's through the transfer portal or just overseas, has been really big for us.
You ever have to deal with homesickness? It seems like maybe more so now than ever that U.S. students are more likely to stay closer to home, but you always have the international athletes that are willing to take a chance and have that opportunity and be grateful for
Mhm.
that opportunity. But when one of those windstorm kicks up, are you having to like, hey, it's gonna be all right, we'll be all right.
Yeah, I mean, all the time, all
Yeah.
the time. And that's just part of the college experience
Yep.
is, and we talk about that when we have these individual meetings, like, going out in the world on your own and having some ownership and knowing that, hey, whatever outcome happens, it's on you, right? It's on me. Like I need to take that responsibility. Um, I think, once you get through the initial maybe 4 or 6 weeks of kind of being out on your own, away from your parents, you got to make all these decisions on your own. It definitely gets easier. But again, I think that like the track and field community and just the community of Canyon and West Texas A&M helps a lot with these things. And it is a smaller place that a lot of people like to call home, and it feels like that. It feels very homey. So I think people settle in pretty quick, but there's definitely that initial, homesickness that hits, and it usually comes up, like you said, when the weather's bad, or maybe somebody has a bad race, or they're just down about life in general. And we talk about all those things, when we have these individual meetings with our students.
Coach, you mentioned that it's easy for you to sell West Texas. It's your home, your alumni there, you love it. What majors are kids going to West Texas A&M for, and what is there to do in Canyon, Texas?
Yeah. Yeah, so majors, obviously sports and exercise science is a huge one. And that's just because athletes are interested in athletics. But really a lot of our European students, they pursue degrees in business. We have a really, really good business school. I can't remember the acronym off the top of my head, but it's got an accreditation that only about 5% of the business schools in the entire world have. So it's very, very high regarded, very hard accreditation to get a hold of. Um, so yeah, that to me, and you can kind of get this private school feel, but it's still a public school. So School of Business, engineering is also big for us, and SES are kind of our three big things that internationals come for. As far as Canyon, there's not much to do. There's about 15,000 people, but a great sell for us as well is, right, you can have this small town. It's been voted safest college town in America now a few times. But Amarillo, which is the largest town in the Texas Panhandle, it's about 200,000 people. It's actually where I live. It's only about a 15-minute drive from campus. So you can have this safe small town, all the dirt roads in the world to run on. But if you want to go bowling or go to the movies or go to a nice restaurant or go out with your friends, right, it's a 15 or 20-minute drive. So I think that's really a balance that our student athletes enjoy as well. That's you can't really get in a lot of places in America.
What's the student population?
10,000.
10,000. How many are living on campus, you know?
Ooh, that's a good question. We have quite a few dorms. I would imagine we are a somewhat big commuter school, right? Being a regional university. So if I were to guess, 3 to 4,000 maybe.
Coach, we're seeing the landscape of the NCAA kind of change and evolve. You mentioned the portal has been a benefit. What sort of things have you seen changing in the Division two landscape in cross country and distance running?
Yeah, I mean, not too much as of yet. I mean, you see a little bit of name, image, and likeness taking place in some of these Division twos that have money that they can give to some of their better student athletes to keep them around and keep them happy. Um, but some of the things in the SEC and the Big 12 and these bigger Division One conferences, these things with roster limits and all the issues that name, image, and likeness is causing as a result of just having it around. I think it's only a matter of time, but before that leaks in Division Two, I don't know exactly how that looks. I know there's been some recent rule changes that kind of loosen the parameters that Division One has already loosened with just what you can pay for and when you can pay for it and things like that. And all that legislation will take part in August. So it'll be interesting to see how that kind of plays out. But the division in itself is, I mean, it's gotten so much better just in the time that I've been at West Texas A&M. And I don't know if that's a result of international recruiting or technology or double thresholds and people just pushing the envelope. But when I was a student athlete, if you ran 1420 indoor, you'd probably make the national meet, right? And that was in 2016. And I had a guy run 1358 this year, and he was the last one in. So the depth of the entire NCAA from Division One to Division Three is just so much better now. And it's at a place that, I mean, it's unbelievable. Like William M. Ponza, my top guy, he ran 1339 and was third in the 5K, and 752 and was fourth in the 3K. And that, I mean, again, if you were running that even in 2019, I mean, those are both division records, championship records. And that's just not the case anymore. But so it's an exciting time to be in the NCAA. And I think that, that level is only elevating everybody. Um, and I will be interesting to see where it caps off because if these times get any faster, I mean, it's starting to bleed into Division One, right? And it's just at a place that's unbelievable.
Do you ever have to worry, or do you ever have to have conversations about maybe some Division I schools poking around at some of your stud athletes, both on the men and women program? You find a diamond in the rough, maybe somewhere you come in, you get them some strength training, and they really jump some levels. Do you have to worry about that at all, or have you had to have those conversations?
Yeah, I've had those conversations. I mean, there's some coaches that are a little sneaky out there. They'll get a student athlete to message one of my student athletes, and that happens quite a bit, honestly. But again, I think having the great relationship with the student athletes, and we talk a lot about things, just like, hey, the grass isn't always greener, and just constant conversations about these kinds of things. That if you start to run fast, there's going to be schools that approach you, and they're going to try to sell you on something and make you a lot of promises. But if you're doing well here and excelling here and happy here, then why don't we continue to grow and see how good you can get? Because again, I think that's something that's really undervalued, is just being comfortable in a place, and having a good relationship with your coach and your professor, and the university as a whole and the community as a whole. So those are definitely things that happened. And in the day and age of now, there's no transfer regulations. As long as the student athlete's eligible, they can transfer as many times as they'd like. So those are for sure things that we talk about, and things that we think about. You could get to the summer, and what your best student athlete could just say, "Hey, coach, I want to jump in the portal," and your hands are kind of tied. There's nothing you could do. But luckily, I haven't had anybody do that to me yet. Um, but yeah, I think that's a result of just of having these conversations. Like, hey, these people are going to approach you. It's going to happen. Don't be fooled, kind of thing. And I'm lucky that I have a group that's pretty loyal and pretty faithful, to the things that we're trying to accomplish here.
Coach, you said you haven't had to deal with that yet. Has there been any situations as a head coach that you didn't expect to deal with that you kind of had to like shake your head or laugh at and be like, man, I can't believe I have to deal with this right now?
I mean, all the time. When you get these close to these student athletes, they're, especially these international athletes, you can become, a parental figure for them, and they're going to come to you with things that you never thought that they would, talk to you about, whether it's a situation with, one of their loved ones, or drama in the household, or they're in a bad relationship, whatever it might be. Um, and you just kind of have to talk through them through that, and make sure that they're supported, and you point them in the right avenues, right? Whether it's counseling on campus, or um, even going off site for some things. So yeah, having those conversations is something that, again, it goes back to, I think I really undervalued the importance of a good relationship. Um, and once these student athletes are comfortable with you, they're going to come to you with some things, um, and you're going to have to probably help them navigate, because being in college, it's a tricky thing. You're in this weird transition point in your life, and you're not really sure who you are and what you want to do, and why you're working through that. You're also trying to run really, really fast, and sometimes those things don't always line up. So yeah, just discussions like that, probably on a weekly basis. Just things that I never would have imagined, um, dealing with as a head coach. But again, like, that's, to me, is now more coaching than writing the perfect workout plan. Right? It is making sure these kids are in the right state of mind, and they're able to navigate these tricky parts of their life.
Yeah, it's crazy the amount of hats you have to wear as a head coach. You're not just coach, you're a therapist, you're maybe mom or dad. Yeah, you have to worry about expense reports. There's a lot of hats you have to wear.
Accountant.
Accountant, yeah.
Oh
Coach,
yeah, yeah. It's crazy.
Coach, who do we have to keep an eye on for outdoor and cross country?
Yeah, outdoor for us. William M. Ponce is still big. This is his final outdoor season. He's, hopefully, we're gonna chase the Division II record out in California for the 10K. He ran 28 flat last season. I'm hoping he can run in the 27:40s. That'd be incredible for him. He's looking very strong. He ran 13:33 indoor, um, out in Boston in February, and 7:52 for 3K. Split 4:02 on our DMR in the mile. So he's looking incredible. He's been here for a year now. I'm hoping that, he can get that record. Aziz Mohammed's another guy for us. He won the 1500-meter national title last year. I'm hoping he can hopefully dip into the 330s, 339, 338 for 1500. And then on the women, Abigail Abigail, she's a freshman phenom for us. She ran 207 indoor. She split 205 on our DMR. I'm expecting big things out of her. Um, yeah, and then just some young people, some veterans. Elise Laville, Julie Lafar. Those are two French athletes that I have that are a little older. One's a junior, one's a senior. I'm hoping that they can not only make the meet in the 10K, but become all Americans. So we have a pretty well-rounded group from 10K to 1500, all the way down to 800. And I'm hoping we can help West Texas score some big points right at the outdoor national meet.
Talk about, just wrapping up indoors, you had sixth place on both sides with the men and women as a team. Do you guys circle the wagons a little bit, or do we kind of roll right into outdoor? And are you guys practicing already, back at it?
Yeah. It's oh, man, I'm telling you, this transition from the indoor to outdoor is a little rougher than it typically is. Just because we have a home meet this Saturday. A lot of my best people won't compete,
Mhm.
but Texas relays, Raleigh relays, like those are already coming up, and we need to chase some qualifying marks. So we are taking it a little easy this week. We're still running some big volume, not too hard of workouts, kind of some threshold like stuff. Um, and then try to recover kind of Saturday on and then try to hit some marks on Friday. So it's probably the toughest part of the year because you're coming off of sort of this mini peak at the indoor championships, and then you got to recoup, especially emotionally, not only physically, but just turning around from that big of an effort, sometimes multiple events for these athletes, saying, "Hey, now we got to go to North Carolina or Austin, Texas, and we need to, hit a steeple, and we haven't been doing a lot of steeple practice." So, just things like that. This is probably the toughest part of the year, but again, like we tell these athletes all the time, we got to turn the page and eyes forward and move ahead.
Coach, you mentioned Raleigh Relays. That's a meet that's near and dear to my heart. I ran my 5,000-meter outdoor PR there way back in 1998, I believe it was. So you're
Okay.
bringing me back. It was one of my favorite track meets of all time, not just because of the time I ran there, but just the event in NC State and Raleigh itself. It's a great place.
Yeah, I've actually never been. This is my first year going, so I'm excited to. I mean, I always see great results out of that meets. Um, So I'm really doing it to try to give my 5K, 10K double people an opportunity at each distance. So the majority of my group will run 5K in Raleigh and then hopefully turn around in about 3 weeks and hit a good 10K out in Azusa.
All right. We just had Coach Hoyt on from Azusa Pacific as well, too. So shout out to Coach Hoyt. Did you guys have spring break yet?
We did, but it was actually in the middle of our national meet. So
Okay.
yeah, it
Beautiful
was
Indianapolis for spring break, huh?
yeah, my first time in India as well. And I mean, it was okay. I don't know what I was expecting, but being downtown with a group of student athletes and figuring out the logistics of where to park a 15 passenger van and where are we going to eat. And that's a whole mess anytime we're downtown, but we got through it. We got through it.
How'd you like the track itself?
Yeah, I liked the venue. I thought the track was nice. I thought it was fast. Obviously, there's some great times. Um, Yeah, I mean, it was an indoor meet. I've been to some tracks where the warm-up area is cramped or the seating's funny and you can't really see. There's nowhere for coaches to stand. And I thought they did a really great job of allowing the coaches to be like right up on the track. Yeah, I'm real big on, especially in championship races, being able to provide some feedback to a student athlete. And I thought that was phenomenal. Probably the best championship that I've been to, just in terms of that.
Coach, is there anything on West Texas that we haven't spoke on that you want our audience and listeners to know about?
No, not really. I just think. When people think of West Texas, they think of flat and there's nothing but open space, and that is the case, but it's a really diverse place. Um, I mentioned the altitude, that's a huge benefit for us, but it's not only flat, but we have Paladera Canyon, which is about 20 minutes from campus. It's the second largest canyon in North America. So West Texas can also be very hilly. And again, I think that in itself also makes it a great place to train. But the university itself, the community itself. It's a really special place. It's a place that's very well supported when it comes to track and field and athletics in general. Um, and being part of, UTRGV, which is the school that I coached at previously, University of Texas, Rio Grande Valley. It's in a much bigger kind of metropolitan area. You don't really feel that. You don't really feel that connection to the community. And I think being here with track and field a priority, that just it makes it such a special place to be.
Coach, you mentioned the dirt roads, but you also mentioned the second largest canyon in the United States. I'm curious, as an ultra marathoner, there's some good trails out there to run on as well as the dirt roads.
There are, yeah. So they actually have a 50K and I think a 100K um, every fall out there. So it's a great place to run. We typically don't go down there too much because the trails are pretty tight
Yep.
right there. See, I mean, they're just single track bike trails. I go out with my wife out there quite often, and it's very nice. But we don't take the team too much. But yeah, it's a great place to run, great place to ride your bike for sure. There's plenty of space out there. Like I said, they have 100K is pretty far, and they're able to run that out there. So it's a nice place, and it's a hidden gem when you come here and you come right up on it, and you don't see it till the last second, and you're not expecting it.
You had me at 100K.
Final four, Rich.
Let's do it.
Coach, are you a coffee drinker?
I am.
How do you brew your coffee and how do you take it?
I just drip coffee. I love pour overs as well, and just black, nothing in it.
Any good roasters out there in West Texas?
Yeah, there's a few. Palace Coffee Company is a place there in Canyon. They also have a location here in Amarillo. That's probably my number one spot. That's not some sort of chain like Starbucks. Palace Coffee, great there in Canyon, great little vibe. Most of the college students there take advantage of their nice little study room in the back. But yeah, you could find me there almost every day.
Check that out. Coach, do you have any daily practices or rituals that you do on a regular basis to show up as the strongest version of Zach Daniel?
Yeah, to me, just being happy outside of coaching, nothing specific. You know, I think the longer I'm in this, I just really notice that you have to have a good balance. Sometimes it's really hard to turn off coaching, just with recruiting and setting up practice and thinking about training, and it can be a hard thing and it can take a toll on your mind. So I think just really finding activities outside of that, that kind of keep you busy, that don't have you always thinking about the task and the job at hand. So to me, I love working on cars. I love marksmanship, shooting rifles, shooting guns. I love to drum, um, just things like that. So no specific ritual, just being happy outside of it. That's a big part for me.
You dabble in hunting at all too?
A little bit. I haven't in a while, since I got here at West Texas, but yeah, I have several family members. I actually have a cousin up in Wyoming that's always begging me to come elk hunt with him, so I may have to take him up on that.
Yeah, that's a good place to do that. Curious, what kind of cars you're working on?
Yeah, it's really my own car, 2010 Jeep Wrangler
Okay.
that I've modified, and here and there transmission has issues, or so it's really not a lot of it's just because it's breaking down and it's older, and I mean it's the same car I had when I was a junior in high school, and I was
Oh,
very hard
wow.
on that thing, just beat it up. So yeah, I love working on that thing. um I love just reading about engines and mechanics in general, and I'm always curious how they work. So a lot of the stuff that I've kind of figured out is just through, yeah, reading and watching videos and learning about it. But I've been able to do some pretty serious work that probably saved me a few $1,000s, and that's kind of where it came from. But yeah, it's something that I really do enjoy doing, and I'm hoping, in the future I could buy another vehicle and kind of work on it, maybe an older muscle car or something like that.
Right on.
Coach, I asked this question as someone who does know nothing about cars, and I take my car to get the oil change. Do you change the oil in your car?
I do.
That's a plus in the Airey Bros book for sure. Coach, what are you listening to right now? Music, podcasts, audiobooks? Are you reading anything?
Yeah, I'm reading a little bit right now. But yeah, I'm a big podcast guy, so I love uh Steve Magnus and his podcast. I'm also a fan of like everybody. I love some Joe Rogan episodes. He has some interesting people on there. Um, Peter Attia, the doctor, right, the longevity expert. I love him as well. Andrew Huberman. So a lot of stuff that's kind of human performance based, but I've really been digging into sort of the mental side of things more lately. And Steve Magnus with his new book, winning the inner game or whatever the name of it is. And the podcasts that have kind of streamed off of that have kind of been a target for me lately. It's something that I really enjoy listening to.
What are you listening to when you're driving in that Jeep Wrangler?
Oh, a lot, man. So I'm kind of all over the place with my musical taste. Like I love kind of more modern R&B, like J. Cole. He's a huge artist of mine. But then I also love like the music that my parents grew up on. So my parents are like huge Def Leppard and Bon Jovi and AC/DC. Like so I listen to a lot of that when I'm driving down the highway and kind of I just put my phone on shuffle or my Spotify on a playlist and wherever it takes me, it takes me. Um, but yeah, lately I've been kind of on a hair rock kick, right? AC/DC, Def Leppard, bands like this. I've been on my Spotify a lot.
Heck yeah, we get down with that. Coach, last one we have for you is lighthearted. It could be maybe there's some kind of unique food offering in West Texas. Maybe there's a delicious craft beer. Do you have a guilty pleasure?
Ooh, I do not actually, and I've been asked this a few times. I'm pretty simple. Drink my coffee black, like a good medium rare steak. There's nothing. I'm pretty transparent about things. So yeah, no guilty pleasure for me, unfortunately.
All right.
Coach, thank you so much for taking some time in this transition period between indoor and outdoor to talk with the Airey Bros. Got taught me some new things on West Texas besides, Terry Funk and the Million Dollar Man went there. So I am intrigued to check it out a little bit more. And thank you so much for your time tonight.
Yeah, thank you guys for having me.
Absolutely, Coach. It was an honor and a pleasure. It was fun to watch you guys at Nationals and now to get a chance to chat with you, hear more about the program, more about the athletes and the school. It's been great, and we're going to be again adding you to the list of people that we will be rooting for at Outdoor Nationals, of course, in cross country as well too. So, thanks for your time, and we do appreciate you joining us. Tomorrow night, ladies and gentlemen, we will be back for the three-peat. We have Dylan Anderson from the University of Evansville cross country and track and field program will be joining us. So we'll be back tomorrow night, same bad time, same bad channel. Until then, we'll see you all. Have a great night.